Thank you. We'd have Maxwell's father, Steve Anderson, start by making us saying a few words.
Sir, please start by stating your first and last name, spelling both for the record.
Stephen Anderson. Stevenanderson.
What would you like to say, sir?
Thank you for this opportunity. On behalf of myself and my family, I'd like to say a few things. First, to Sade's family, there are no words that I can share that will reduce your pain. You are all in my thoughts every single day. Although it is not the same, having lost a boy that was like a son to me 10 years ago, I have some sense of what you are feeling. It took me a very long time to get past the pain that I felt for the person that contributed to his passing. I'm not asking you to forgive anybody or anything. That is between you and your God. To the court, in particular, to Deputy Allen, to Judge Crivello, thank you for your compassion and all of your professionalism. To Max, we want you to know that we love you and support your plan for self-improvement. In this, we hope for a path for you to become a positive influence for society, both while you are incarcerated and hopefully after. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. As you noted at the beginning, we filed much of our remarks in writing so that the court would have a clear picture of what we were asking for in this case. I know that there's no way to put a number sometimes on the loss of life. It's a very hard task that the court has whenever, being in homicide court, you're confronted with homicide cases on a fairly regular basis. And by putting a number of 25 years of parole eligibility, we do not make any claim that we know the magic number. What I would observe is, in terms of that recommendation, is this. When you set, first of all, the sentence in this case is a mandatory life sentence. The jury convicted him. That's required. One way or the other, whether he's granted the opportunity to be, and I use the word parole, obviously we understand that it means extended supervision. It's often used interchangeably, but we're referring to some future hope that Mr. Anderson would have the opportunity to be released from custody. And the point of that is that he will be supervised by the Department of Corrections for the rest of his life, no question about it. And he has been in custody now, obviously for over a year, in solitary confinement, which is about as horrible of a condition as a person could ever be confined in. There are basically the unit of the jail, the unit of the jail that he's in is one where there's mental health patients, there's people who are going through substance abuse withdrawals, and so it's a torturous way to exist. Obviously, there are very real safety concerns that Max has going off to prison. We've, I think, expressed some of that in our written submissions to the court, that is a real consideration, because at the end of the day, this is not mob justice in this country. People have the right to a trial. They have the right to the evidence to be presented, the right to be represented by lawyers, and the right to test that evidence, and the jury returned the verdict that it returned. And it's your job to determine the sentence. But I want to emphasize that whether you agree with our recommendation, the state's recommendation, or something in between, no matter what it looks like, Mr. Anderson is going to be saddled with this conviction and the supervision and the incarceration for the rest of his life. As he sits here, I struggle to wrap my mind around some of the case just like everybody else. We heard the evidence. We sat through the trial, and I certainly appreciate the state reciting it again today, but I don't think any of us have forgotten it. And as you read in the pre-sentence report, I'm not going to get into the details of it, but you read Mr. Anderson's version of events. He maintains that he didn't commit the crime. And you can place whatever weight on any sentencing factor you want, obviously, but that's his position. The jury reached a different verdict, and so for purposes of my presentation, I don't think it's wise or useful to parse through the testimony and point out what I think are points of reasonable doubt. The jury rejected that, and they returned the verdict that they returned. What I would say is that when you read through the character letters that were filed by Max's family, and I listened to the remarks from Sade's family as well, beautiful remarks by some of her family members, and the character letters were beautiful as well. But so were the ones on Mr. Anderson's side. Every person who has known Max throughout his life, every one of these character letters speaks to a history and a background that wouldn't suggest that something like this would happen. His mother describes how when she would come to visit him, he had adopted dogs, how they were well trained, how they were obedient, how he talked about wanting to work in a nonprofit center someday, his abilities as a chef, his work history, his imagination. And you go through the other letters that were submitted, his younger sister who had written a letter and talked about Max's intellectual talents and how he was a good student, how things came naturally to him, and how he was a good brother to her. The letter from the grandparents who were mentioned here as part of an earlier case, but his grandparents talking about their positive experiences with Max growing up. And that's the theme, I think, that exists here in all of the character letters when I read through them, that Max is, before he was taken into jail, before he was charged with these crimes, and before this incident took place, Max's character was generally positive. He's a high school graduate. After graduating high school, he went off to the Navy, served in the military for approximately 2 years. And I think there's obvious mental health issues in his background. I think that's clear. His mother talked about what she thinks was a traumatic brain injury that he suffered at 3 years old. There's a documented history of ADHD. And you read during his military service the mention that was made about the suicide attempt that happened in the Navy where Max had tried to hang himself with an electrical cord. So clearly there are mental health issues that deserve treatment, and we know that prison is not the best environment for a person to receive treatment for their mental health issues and their AODA needs. I disagree with the state that there's a long history of violence by Mr. Anderson. I think there are some isolated criminal convictions, but all those criminal convictions are misdemeanors. He has no felonies. And they are all of the disorderly conduct variation. Even the one that the state mentioned about the incident on Wisconsin Avenue that was prosecuted here in Milwaukee, that was settled for disorderly conduct with probation. The incident with his mother, fine only, disorderly conduct. So that is not a significant prior record, and I think that differentiates Max from a lot of other people that come in front of this court. You do see people often in homicide court with gang ties, long histories of gun violence, long history of juvenile misbehavior, and you don't have any of that here. You have misdemeanors. There obviously are AODA needs. I think all of these cases, if you look at the disorderly conducts that he's had in his background, every one of them basically involves either mental health or substance abuse. And I think that's a recurring theme that we see here and even saw a little bit in the trial. The copious amounts of alcohol that was consumed on the night with Sade, I think further underscores that there are certainly AODA issues here. Max's plans for the future, they're, I would submit, incredibly realistic given the circumstances that he's in here. His continue furthering his education is one of his goals, writing books, continuing to learn foreign languages. So I think he does have realistic plans. And obviously the punishment that's been inflicted sitting here in the county jail in solitary confinement has been horrific. Really, there's been almost no human interaction. He sits in a cell all day. His human interaction is when a PSI author comes to visit him or one of his attorneys comes to visit him, but not even being able to have visits from your family, not be able to see people on a face-to-face manner other than the guards is truly horrible. And of course, the fear that we have of him being targeted in prison, we know that because of some of the publicity that this case has generated, and I know it's not a matter that this court can specifically address, but we would ask that as part of the judgment of conviction in this case, the court express no objection to the Department of Corrections choosing to house Mr. Anderson as they see fit. I know it's up to the Department of Corrections, but it is an important consideration in this case that even people who have been convicted of very horrible crimes, we are not a death penalty state, we're not a mob justice state, nor are we that way in this country. And I would hope that the Department of Corrections takes measures to keep Mr. Anderson safe. The compass evaluation in this pre-sentence report is certainly not as bad as you often see. In fact, most of the, and that's an actuarial instrument that is done to evaluate a person by the probation department. And it's on pages 39 and 40 of the pre-sentence report. He is rated unlikely in numerous categories of having issues with society and routines, unlikely to have any leisure or recreation issues, unlikely to have thinking and attitude problems, unlikely to have negative personality traits, even unlikely to have anger issues. And so those are the actuarial tools that you've asked the Department of Corrections to use by drafting this report. They come back and conclude that these are not significant issues that need to be addressed at some point. There's not a socialization problem. There's not an educational problem. And we know that from his background. You learned a lot about Mr. Anderson during this trial. He has a long work history. He's been basically a pro-social person since he went off to the Navy. He's held a variety of jobs throughout Milwaukee. People have known him throughout the community. He's been a bartender, he's been a server, he's worked for an insurance company. And so he does have a proven work history. He was also a homeowner. He was maintaining a stable residence. He was maintaining his financial obligations. And so he's not the kind of person who comes to court with such hopelessness in terms of their ability to function in society that I think we should give the life sentence for. So my recommendation, as I indicate, is for parole eligibility at 25 years. That doesn't mean he gets released at that point. All that means is that at some future date, 25 years, when he has matured and grown, that a parole board will be able to evaluate his situation and decide whether or not he should have the opportunity to be released. That's all that means. Doesn't mean he gets out at that point. He may not even get out at 30 or 35 or 40. It would be entirely up to that agency to look at his growth and his behavior in prison. What has he done? What has he accomplished? And if they conclude that that would be appropriate, obviously the victim's family would be permitted to play a role in that process as well, and they would be able to decide whether or not to release him. We're asking you for that mercy today and that opportunity for some future release. Thank you.